Welcome everyone to the Catherine Project's fourth ever online town hall. I'm Jordan. Some of you may know me, um, but if you don't, I am the executive director of the Catherine Project. I should pause and just make sure everyone can hear me. It's so quiet. Yes, excellent. Okay. Um, I have to avoid chaos, I have the like forced mute on right now, but once we get further into the meeting, into the Q&A portion or the conversation portion, I will turn that off. When I do that, I just ask that you remain muted until you want to speak, just so we can avoid any sort of audio issues. Um, just a quick sort of overview of how I think the event is going to go. So um, I'm going to offer some brief introductory remarks, sort of highlighting where the project's at, why we do this, have these town halls, this kind of thing. Um, it won't take too long, and then I'll turn it over to Zena, and Zena is going to share some reflections on intellectual community and and the culture of the project. And then afterwards, as promised, we will have a Q&A. And there's a tradition with these town halls that um, it just kind of goes until it peters out. You're welcome to leave, of course, anytime. But Aschely, Zena, and I will stick around. Zena may have to leave a little bit earlier than usual because I think she has dinner with family at some point. Um, we'll see. Yeah. All right. So as I mentioned, this is the fourth Catherine Project Town Hall, and I just wanted to say something about why we do this, or like what kind of town hall is this? Um, since the beginning of the Catherine Project 5 years ago, uh, we've really wanted this to be for the project to be a community. And we've seen our purpose as also propagating other communities of readers or learners, even if we are not the hub of that thing or that activity. I think a simultaneous advantage and obstacle in this respect, that is in terms of forming community, is this the online setting that we find ourselves in. Um, when you combine the largely online setting of our programs with the small size of the groups, there's a necessary tendency towards atomization or kind of siloing. And we wanted to offer opportunities as best we were able for the community to come together, and also for us to get to know the community, outside of the groups that we might be leading. And by we, in this case, I'm speaking primarily about its leadership. So Aschely, Zena, and I. And we also wanted there to be some kind of space where we could have like an open, candid conversation about things outside of just these more sort of limited channels of emails or forums or one-on-one or small group conversations. So from the beginning, we had, I think we used to call these Catherine cafes. Is that right, Zena? Had something like this. Yeah.
I don't remember if I think we thought about calling them Catherine cafes.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the Catherine Cafe is like a chimera that's haunted the project. It's never actually happened. So, in town hall all along, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there are strictly limitations to what you can do with the technology. But even so, I think this is a really good practice. Um, and the last piece, which segues, I guess, into my remarks, is that this is an opportunity for us to share in a conversational, more personal way where what we think the sort of the state of the project is and where it's at now, where it might be heading. So I'll say a little bit about that, but I also I like for that to come out in the question period. I like to think about it. I want us to be able to think about that together. So where the project is at now, as I understand it, you might be aware from emails or your own experience in the courses that the project has been undergoing some very significant growth, more significant probably than we've experienced previously. So just for example, this fall, so we run, you may be familiar with this, but we run 3 terms each year. We run a spring, a summer, and a fall term. For our fall term, we were able to place 1,350 readers. Those are unique readers. Some people got into multiple courses. Um, and we crossed this was the first time we had crossed the 1,000 reader mark. Um, to put that in perspective, we served more readers in the fall of 2025 than we served in all of 2024, the entire year. We processed 3,600 applications, or about that many applications in 2025, which was about 1,500 more than 2024. And we organized almost 300 courses this year, which is over 100 more than in 2024. And we've done this without really expanding much in terms of staff. Aschely was hired in 2023. So it's just been the two of us. And in many ways, our methods haven't changed that much. We've tried to get more efficient about some things and to develop some of our processes and the technology that we use. Um, but this is really, for us, this is really significant. And I suspect for the community, this is really significant in ways that maybe aren't even clear to me and Aschely and Zena, the way that the project feels now, whether it feels bigger. So that's something I hope maybe we can talk a little bit about in the Q&A. Um, and all of this is not, these are just regular term offerings or courses. These are not community seminars. These aren't one-off events. So we're not even taking into account all of those events that have also happened and what goes into those. The other thing that has changed significantly is that we've offered a lot more in-person opportunities to read together. So in 2024, I think maybe there were about 250 or so readers who participated in some kind of in-person event. And in 2025, that had more than doubled. So um, we also launched our core program in the fall of 2024. If you've been with us for a while, you might remember the old tutorials where you had these very small classes or courses where the readers would submit writing. It looked a lot like the second, third, and fourth sequences of the core, but in other ways, it was very similar to the reading groups in that the texts that were available were kind of all over the place. And the core program was intended to sort of address some of what we felt were the shortcomings of the tutorial program. And so, in some ways, I think we have succeeded in that the tutorial program placed a very small number of those who applied, sometimes 1 in 10. And all told, we only ever served about 200 readers in 3 years of offering the tutorial program. The core program, by contrast, just over the last year has served about 650 readers, and our placement rate is closer to, depending on the segment, it's closer to 50 or 75%. So I think all of this is very exciting, excuse me. And I just want to mention that the what makes the growth possible is essentially three things. It's the people who volunteer their time, hundreds of people volunteering their time to lead reading groups, language tutorials, and also volunteering on the tech side. We've had a very dedicated tech volunteer who has almost single-handedly built a lot of our enrollment software from the ground up. And we have had a lot of help with strategy and planning for this growth from other volunteers who have met with us consistently. So I think it's worth just acknowledging that, and I'm tremendously grateful. One of the other things that makes the growth possible is donations. People have been very generous towards us. Many of you have been very generous towards us, that we have been able, therefore, to continue to operate, I think, the way that, in accordance with this principle of openness, where we don't charge anything. We've tried to keep the bar very low for getting into studying great books seriously, carefully, with other people. And the third, I just have to say, it really is Miss Aschely Cohn, who again joined us in 2023. Before that, I was only staff member, and I was pretty much at my wit's end. Even then, it was much smaller then. And when Aschely came in, it just changed things enormously. So Aschely has put in such tremendous work, and many of you probably know Aschely better than you do me at this point, because she's also been the point of contact in so many ways for the community. So I just want to acknowledge those three parties, shall we say. Um, so then looking ahead, in terms of where I think we might go from here, or what I'm excited about. Um, we, Even though the core program, I think in many ways has allowed us to offer something like a more intensive uh, opportunity to read these books with other people and to push oneself in one's thinking. Um, as the core has expanded in terms of we've unrolled out the segments one by one. Now that there are all four segments in play, the available tutors or leaders of the core program are spread out across those four segments, which means that there is a bottleneck at core one. So we've seen the number of applications to the Life of the Mind seminar, the first sequence in the core, have stayed pretty steady or grown slightly, but the available sections have shrunk as tutors have moved on into other sections. So one of the chief challenges, as I understand it, for us is to not only continue to sort of review the core program and see if it's accomplishing what we want it to accomplish, but also find a way to ease the bottleneck. So that means maybe more aggressively recruiting leaders for the core. So on that subject, I'm very excited about an upcoming initiative, which I've teased in the past, or we've mentioned as a sort of a hope or a dream, but it will be a reality. This summer, we'll be organizing an in-person week-long development workshop for people who want to lead seminars in the core. And we'll have an application process for this. We think there will be 30 to 40 people involved, and this will happen at the Annapolis campus of St. John's. And I guess this will be a really good opportunity for us to get to know some new leaders well and to prepare them for what's required. If you've been in Life of the Mind or ever looked at the Life of the Mind reading list, it is no joke. It's kind of crazy in an intentional way. Zena's Zena's modeling that. Um, so I'm very excited about that. That core program, or sorry, that the summer program, we're only able to do that again because people have been generous and given us the money to enable us to do it. So thank you again. Um, Other initiatives, as in my view, are to streamline the volunteer process generally in the project and to make it less opaque. So we have before created a sort of artificial barrier in order to just moderate how many volunteer inquiries we get. That is, we don't really talk about it and we sort of wait for people to come knocking. Um, and it has worked well for us in the past, but I think we've reached the point where even if we were to continue that practice, there are just enough people knocking on the door that there has to be a lot more clarity and more of a straightforward process for how volunteering to lead reading groups or language tutorials or subject tutorials, how that works and how one is able to do that. So um, Aschely and I and a volunteer have been working on this process and developing the forms for it and other materials. And so I'm hoping to introduce that in the spring. And um, finally, I think we've also before talked about wanting to create a directory for in-person groups, especially in-person groups that aren't necessarily being formed under our supervision or aegis. So if readers want to start, discerning interest in their area for forming a reading group, we want there to be a resource available that where people can find the other people around them who want to do this and make forming in-person reading groups much simpler. And then finally, I even with the improvements that have been affected over the last couple of years in terms of software, there are still many needs in this area. So I mentioned this as something that we are continuing to work on, especially in ways that I think will directly affect the community, wanting to have um, better, more sort of reliable methods of communicating quickly with everyone about their course placements and how to withdraw from courses, how to switch to a different section, and basically keep track of where they're at in a term in terms of placement. So I know that can be frustrating sometimes. A lot of those emails they come straight from Aschely or I's hands, and yeah, the project's just a lot bigger than that. So. Um, Yeah, so and I mentioned that because if there, I just want to plug this, if there are any of you in the audience who are particularly tech savvy or think that any of these initiatives, either the directory for in-person groups or help with email automation or placement technology, if anyone wants to help us out with those things, we'd love to talk to you. So the final thing I wanted to mention is that the core was started um, by in part with grant funding from the AFGAR Foundation, and this is one of the very few foundations who um, have really I think bought into what the project is doing. Um, but that foundation has spent down, so. This is one of the funding challenges we will seek to respond to next year is how to sort of continue to make the core available and without that sort of subsidization. And that leads directly into this other exciting sort of update that I'll end on, which is that um, we did hire a third staff member who hasn't been widely introduced to the community. He just started in September, but when I was thinking about, like, oh, this grant funding is going away and the project is getting so big, I really think I need help with the financial stewardship of the project. So we decided to hire someone. This is our director of philanthropy, who is going to help us maintain the project on a sure financial footing. So I just want to introduce Nate Washatka and give Nate a moment just to introduce himself to the community.
Hey everyone, I'm Nate Washatka. I'm the newest staff member at the Catherine Project. Like Jordan said, I'm taking the role of Director of Philanthropy. I'm super excited to be here, tonight to be part of this conversation, but also, more generally, at the Catherine Project. I've admired this organization for a long time, from a distance. But I feel very privileged to be part of the team now that's responsible for stewarding and sustaining and helping this community to thrive. It's very exciting. Um, I think what I've come to cherish about the Catherine Project is probably the same thing that many of you cherish. It's the just the sort of genuine enthusiasm and love of learning that people bring to all of these reading groups and tutorials. It's wonderful. Like it's really exciting to see and be part of up close. So yeah, I should say thank you for, the generosity of so many that have allowed us to provide such a wonderful place, for people to read and gather and create something that I think is going to last for a long time. And yeah, thanks for, being here tonight, sharing your time. A week from Christmas, it's awesome to see so many people who love the Catherine Project. So yeah, I look forward to hearing your questions and comments and the conversation.
Nate. So that essentially concludes my remarks. So I will turn it over to Zena, um, who has some reflections to share with us about community, I believe.
Yes. The first thing I wanted to say is welcome. It's wonderful. Thank you for coming, for spending this time with us, hearing more about the Catherine Project and how we work. The second thing is just as Jordan had to make a special call out to Aschely for all that she's brought to the project, as time has gone on, as we entered our fifth year, actually we finished our fifth year, I think about it, this past fall. One thing that's become clearer to me is even though I'm the name that's on top of the project in some way, even though I'm called a founder or I'm said to have built the project, the more time goes on, the more I realize how much Jordan is a co-founder, maybe more than a co-founder. I don't think there would be a Catherine Project without Jordan. So don't make any mistake. He may be humble and quiet and a little gloomy sometimes, but he has the fire in his heart has kept this project going and has built it in so many ways I could never have imagined. So one of the signs of his subtle deviousness is that if you look at the background of Jordan's picture, I don't know if you noticed, there are three items which were very carefully selected, I'm sure. I'm sure it's just not chance. There's a plant that's almost all dead with some green shoots coming out. That's the life of the mind in our current culture, and the green shoots are part of what we're trying to produce. Behind it, there's a brightly colored painting of a rooster, and the rooster is crowing at the dawn. Okay. I just made this up as I was watching Jordan's background, in case you can't tell that. And then there is a little sign saying, "You'll never walk alone." I believe this is actually in Jordan's actually his parents' home, but I could be wrong. Um, and that, although it's perhaps a phrase that is a little overwrought, a little sentimental, it is a key part of what Catherine Project is about. That is, we are about community. And I want to say something about that because I think community can seem like a sentimental thing, a feel-good, cuddly word that we're reducing isolation. Um, but one of the things I think about with some regularity is the importance that community has for the life of the mind, and for thinking, pondering, studying, understanding, seeking insight, which is the core zeal that animates the project. So these things we have these core principles. If you've looked through carefully through our website, hospitality, zeal, seriousness, and freedom. So zeal is what Nate referred to and what Jordan referred to, where the reason why we don't offer credits and the reason why we don't charge tuition is we're trying to leave sort of as just let it shine the zeal for learning to shine as clearly as possible to shine without any external incentives. For those of you who have read Plato's Republic, which is in core 3, if you've gotten that far, not many of you I think have, but if you have, or if you've read it anyway, you know that Socrates and his interlocutors tried to prove that justice is beneficial by stripping away all of its external benefits. And I, having taken in that text from a young age, has have it shaped the way I think. I think part of my thinking when I wanted to start the Catherine Project was to see what happened, to see what was in the human heart so far as learning was concerned, if you stripped away the things which were external to what mattered about it. Credits, degrees, grades, tuition, and so on. Even prizes or status. None of these things really have a role in Catherine Project. And what I discovered, and I've said it before, I'll say it as often as it needs to be said. One thing I think the Catherine Project has, without question, done is showed to many, many people, more and more people, the more who hear about us, that the love for this kind of learning is alive and well. Um, that lots and lots and lots of people want to read serious books and want to have serious conversations about them. And seriousness, I use the word serious in a way, it's not a very precise term, and in another way, it's very important because we've all been part of book clubs, or we know what a book club is. It's sometimes this gets Matt Iglesias, the journalist who joined us for a time, he called us a weird Zoom book club. And I kind of liked it. On the other hand, I wanted to be like, no, it's not a book club, because the point is not the mere social interaction. The point is that each of us wants to get down into the depths of the fundamental questions, the basic principles of life, the thing that makes thinking and studying and a life in community or alone worthwhile. So the seriousness is a way of not just chit-chatting at the surface of the text, not just passing around, I liked it, I didn't like it, thumbs up, thumbs down, points on a stick, 1 to 10. This is a lot of the way that we are encouraged to respond to things that we read or watch, but to really develop the habit and encourage the habit of letting what we see, what we read, and what we understand to provoke questions, to lead us on paths of inquiry that have the capacity to change us, to change the way we see things, to change the way that we live, to change our relationships with others, to change our work, to change our sense of orientation, and to delve against the highest principles that we can have. So that's our seriousness. Our seriousness is we don't read we read the books. We read them in well as we can, as well as we have time for. We use them to ask serious questions, and we use them to launch paths of inquiry that get to the bottom of life. Now, because there isn't a fixed set of answers to those kinds of fundamental questions, and because even when there are answers, each person has to see for themselves what's going on, our groups are open-ended. We don't have an agenda. If you sign up for the core program, we do not have a set of takeaways that you will get at the end of it that you could somehow extract in advance. What the takeaways are, what kind of learning takes place, is up to each human being who is in that group and what they put into it and what they take from it. And that is freedom. That's the second of the core principles. So we have seriousness, freedom, zeal, and hospitality. Hospitality is the sense in which we are open to everyone. Some of you, and this happens from time to time because we're open-ended and because a lot of people want to read books with us, it sometimes happens that we become accidentally hard to get into. That is, it can be hard to get into a group. That's never our intention. Our basic ideal is that anyone who has a serious desire to do this kind of learning should be able to join us. That's the principle of hospitality. So your application is not rank. We do not rank our applications. We do not have we're not looking for well-educated people, for people with a certain recognizable kind of brain power. We're looking for that zeal, for the desire to learn, for the desire to grow in understanding and insight. And that means that if you are at this meeting and you've tried to apply for a group and for some reason it hasn't worked out, that is something that is distressing us and that we are trying to fix. And in a way, this meeting is one way that we try to fix it. Because what we're doing is countercultural. It's unconventional. It was most certainly 5 years ago, very unconventional and very countercultural. I'm delighted to see as time goes on that it becomes a bit less so. So there's now quite a little bit more discussion. Whatever discourse is good for in the media, I don't know. But whatever it is good for, there's quite a lot more going on in terms of serious reading. First of all, understanding of the ways in which our culture has come to really threaten the reading of books at all, much less serious reading. There's a greater interest in serious literature undertaken by non-professionals. There's a greater interest in providing alternative institutions to our colleges and universities and schools. All of these things are ways in which inadvertently the Catherine Project and the rest of the culture are moving in the same direction. Anyway, the point is that we're countercultural, and that means that the existing modes of support, most foundations, most kinds of philanthropy, are geared up to serve a different kind of institution than the one that we are. Um, and that means, and I think this is a benefit of what we do, that means that we rely much more heavily on individual donations, individual support, individual volunteers than similar organizations do. We had a startup grant for 1 year of salary for one staff member. Otherwise, our grants have been relatively small. And it's individual donors who especially recently have come in to fill the gap and to help us to grow. And we say that's good. We think it's good because it holds us accountable to you. The reasons why we have the town hall meeting is that the Catherine Project, if it's not benefiting its readers, if it's not providing a good for the people that belong to it, then it has no purpose. It belongs to you. And that in one way is that sort of gift that the volunteers and the donors are offering to you. And in another way, it's a responsibility. That is, if it's good for you, if you're benefiting from it, then I think you want um, to help others to enjoy the same thing that you're enjoying. So we ask for you to we've used the language of paying it forward, following this wonderful cafe in South Bend with it has free coffee. You pay for the next person's coffee. So we have free courses, so we ask you to pay for the next person's course. And to do everything you can to make, if you're having a good experience, to do what you can to help us to share it with others, to keep that principle of hospitality open. Okay. Um, I want to say a bit about community, which was supposed to be the theme of my talk. And one thing, it may seem obvious, may seem like a sort of cliche in these circles, but if I think back on the foundations of the kind of practice that we're involved in, which is reading and serious open-ended conversation, it's not the oldest book that we read, but in some ways it's the most foundational. The dialogues of Plato are written dialogues between Socrates, Plato's teacher, and a variety of individuals. The conversations are organized by topic and occasion. They happen on particular occasions, particular times, particular places. They have particular people involved. And and Plato's dialogues are foundational for philosophy, for shared inquiry, and for the sense that the life of the mind is not just something that could help you understand the world in the abstract, and not just stories about the past, you might tell about the campfire, but something which might cut to the heart of what it means to be a human being, that might provide sources of insight and transformation and um, new perspectives that we hadn't had before. And that practice is to sort of try to hammer on the point, something that happens in between more than one person. We have several mistaken pictures about intellectual life. It's very easy to fall into them, even if you fight like I do. One of them is that there are these individual geniuses that hatch knowledge all on their own. That is, somehow there's a person who produced out of out of their mind, like Athena pops out of Zeus's skull, some piece of understanding about the way the world works. So think about the cult of the genius. If you think about the way that people talk about Einstein, or even Plato and Socrates, or Aristotle, or the philosophers, you might think, oh yes, or Newton, the great scientists. You might think, oh, knowledge and insight pop sort of out of a single person's brilliant mind. And I think that one of the things that Plato, one of the greatest of these geniuses has ever been, is pointing to is the origins of all understanding and all insight in human interaction. And of course, if you think about it, there wouldn't be any such thing as knowledge or understanding. The very idea of knowledge and understanding is something that involves a community. The very idea of a teacher means that there's some piece of understanding or some mode of inquiry that can be passed from one person to another. And so there's the open-ended, chaotic exchange that we find in the Platonic dialogues. There's the long conversation that happens over the centuries between different thinkers from different eras. And there are the hidden communities behind each work. That is the teachers, the educators, the community from which a particular author comes from, and the people whom that person learned from and talked with and reflected on, and the people who have been the audience of those writings, the people who have received those writings. So there's community. Again, it's not a group hug around the campfire, even though I've got nothing against group hugs. I mean, as long as, everyone's consenting. But I do think that it's part of what it means to live life of the mind is to live it with other people, whether those people are people right in front of you, members of your community, your teachers, your fellow students, your colleagues, your friends, or whether those are the people of the past, the authors whose heads we try to get into or whose worlds we try to see. Community is essential. And that's why we don't, for instance, record our sessions. We don't have a podcast. That's not because it's because we want you, each person, to be a part of the conversation. We want people to be active in their own learning. We're trying to break the paradigm that's a false paradigm that I think no one really thinks, if they think about it hard enough, that somehow knowledge comes in these containable nuggets, and the faster you absorb them, the more efficiently you absorb them, the more that you know, and the more successful you are. Nothing works like that. Knowledge is alive, it grows, and it needs to be integrated into each individual individually. And we need for that teachers and friends and colleagues. So that's my spiel about community. I don't want to talk forever because I know that all of you will want to talk and have questions, and I want to have the time to sit and listen to what you're interested in. But I just want to say once again, the longer this goes on, the more awestruck I am by the success of the project. And I'm awestruck not because of anything that I've done, but I'm awestruck because, from my point of view, I've done so little. I had an idea, I ran it on my Twitter for a year, and it's exploded in ways I never imagined. And that we say in our emails, privately or generally, how grateful we are to each reader for making the Catherine Project what it is. That's not boilerplate. That's real. We exist because there are people who want to read, who want to think, who want to learn, and who are looking for others to share that experience with. We exist because of you, and it's you that make this a truly awe-striking organization. And we're so grateful for you for everything that you do for us, for coming to your groups, for coming to the town hall, for coming to the in-person events that we're having more and more of, for supporting and being loving and kind to our incredible staff who work too hard, and for all your generosity for everything that you give us, whether that's money, a recurring donation, whether it's a big one-time donation, whether it's some time you can offer, some kind words you can offer, all of that matters. So thanks to all of you. And if you don't donate yet, or if you think you could donate more, please consider it, because we are who we are because of you in all of these ways. And we try to stay humble, we try to stay small, we try to stay serious, but we do need help. So anyway, thanks so much. And now I'm going to open up the floor for questions.
All right, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I'm going to turn off the sort of enforced mute control, but I do ask that until we call on you, at least while the meeting is at this size, that you remain muted to avoid any audio issues. And we haven't done this on Zoom before. I think it should work similarly to Google Meet. So if you are in the desktop app, or you could see your little toolbar at the bottom, you should see a React option. And in the React option, if you sort of expand your options there, the menu, there's a raise hand button. So if you could, if you'd like to ask a question, just hit that raise hand button, and then that will put you in the queue. We'll call on you. And if you have trouble raising your hand, I'll also at this point enable the chat feature. So if you have trouble raising your hand, you can also either put your question in the chat or just put your name out there, and we'll try to get to you that way, alternatively. Okay, thank you.
Stephen Redding, you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so I'm Steve Redding, and I've just completed the first Life of the Mind seminar. I'm currently living in Salvador, Brazil. Have retired there from a long career in the States, and this has been just a wonderful introduction to the organization, and it's really, it's meant a lot to me being here and being able to interact with people. I'm in one of the seminars that is during the daytime, so it captures people from Europe and Asia. We had a couple of people in our group that were from India, from Dubai, from other places, and in fact, there was another Brazilian in our group, which I really appreciated. And I'm going to get to a question eventually, but I just want to say that this whole experience has been sort of a very much a positive exercise in being with an intellectual group, being with a group that's serious, being with a group that's interested in what I would call liberal education. We're all involved in a process of liberal education of ourselves in these groups. And sort of becoming the bearers of world culture into the future. That's a responsibility that everybody, I think, in this group has. It also gives us a responsibility of sort of evangelizing what we're doing. I've told a number of people about the Catherine Project because I think it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing that my friends and peers should be in as well. And so, you know, that I think is a responsibility as a bearer of liberal education, as a bearer of culture, to do that in a group. Now, my question or my request, I would say, is that I would like to see this become more global. I would like to see more members from outside the U.S. Who have access to this, have access to this conversation that we're having. And I'm wondering, is there any plan to spin off regional Catherine projects or groups or that type of thing, maybe in the languages that are here, but also in languages like Portuguese. The first selection for my Life of the Mind group, I read in Portuguese, Parmenides. It was tough, but it taught me Portuguese. So,
Sorry. I'm just trying to see someone order a cab or with Parmenides, the Portuguese I learned from Parmenides. But anyway, it's a funny thought.
exactly. He would say cabs don't exist, so that's okay.
That's true.
But to have this become more globalized, to have regional groups, maybe in the languages of the regions, like here in Latin America. I know there's a Spanish group, but it'd be nice to have a Portuguese group, and maybe groups in other areas where other languages are dominant. So I'd like to ask that question, but before you answer, I would like to also offer my services. I've spent a career now in grant writing and working with philanthropic donors. So if you need any help, if Aschely, if you need any help, take down my name from the Zoom chat here and let me know what I can do to help. Okay, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the wonderful testimony and for the offer of help. I can say a bit about this. It was one of the things that surprised me from the beginning, had people from all over the world. One of our founding pieces of lore, which I like to repeat, even because the organization's gotten so big, I can't be sure that everyone's heard the same lore. One of our first tutorials, I appointed a group leader who I didn't know very well, and who disappeared after a month without saying anything. And that was a group that was reading Homer. There was a guy in Montreal, a guy in Dubai, and a guy in Nairobi. And they just kept meeting without the leader. And so I found out weeks later, and I was like, "Wait, well, I can find a leader for you if you like." They're like, "No, we're happy just to keep talking to one another." So to me, that was such a beautiful testament to the zeal of the Catherine Project. I think the quick answer to that question, we have from time to time heard from people. We were in conversation with some people in India and in Nepal. That's a really far off time zone. So the time zone is obviously the constraint on the main constraint on the global offerings. I think we'd love to see um, uh, sort of regional spin-offs, that is, or we'd love, even, I think one of the main obstacles is finding enough leaders in those time zones to increase our offerings across the sort of 24-hour time clock. It takes time to do that. So part of what I think Catherine Project is an organic entity. So it grows as it grows. We have limited control. It's very important to us to make sure that no matter where you are, if you sign up for a Catherine Project group, you can expect a certain kind of equality. So you're not going to get a book club. You're not going to get a casual chat. You're not going to get people who have done the reading on ChatGPT, but not in the real thing, or they've Googled some interesting trivial facts. Like we don't want that to be in a Catherine Project group. So that's turns out to be one of the most difficult things that we have. That's the biggest bottleneck that we have to growth is finding leaders who we can trust. So this is what Jordan was talking about at the beginning, and that's one of the reasons why we're starting our summer program, which will be a kind of a training ground. And I think as we grow, there'll be more and more people who come in and they will naturally form clusters. And we will be able, I hope, in the long term, to keep offering more and more for people around the world. Likewise, the Spanish, it was a matter of a kind of critical mass. So all of these things happen when we have a critical mass. New York City, for instance, is now like bursting with in-person Catherine Project activity. That's because we happen to pull in a lot of people from New York City, and one of our staff happens to live there. So, and some of our most dedicated volunteers. So we were able that was able to pop out. The Spanish is similar. We had some great volunteers who were fluent in Spanish, and so they started running Spanish groups. So we love it. We want as much of it as possible, and we're just growing our infrastructure in a way that's sometimes feels too slow and in other ways is necessary for us just to make sure that we have the right kind of quality. But we love to hear it, and it's good for us to keep hearing it about how much interest there is overseas that we may not be able, like how people stay up half the night, in these groups. I don't understand. So we want to make it easier for anyone in the world to join us.
I want to add to that that I've met with people. I mean, Zena has as well. We've both been at some of these meetings with people who essentially I think have the idea that you mentioned, Stephen, of like spinning off or starting their own sort of local version of the Catherine Project. And I think a lot of these people are very well-meaning but they don't understand that there are some questions, some basic questions that are questions that we can't answer for them, like some of the practices of the Catherine Project or even the selections of texts. These sorts of things tend to work. They've developed naturally based on just coming out of like where we are at. Like Zena and I both I mean, spent a lot of time at St. John's. So there were things about it that just came naturally, and then people have basically adopted some of that, or they have been willing to meet us there. And a lot of it is just like it. There's already a wealth of cultural like history there that backs up like, well, we're reading Plato. Well, okay, yeah, it's easy to do that in a way in kind of like in the West. I think there are questions that are more local or contextual that, like I said, we can't answer, and so it really requires someone with creativity or real insight into their own context to figure out how exactly to spin that off or export that. Um, so all that to say, I think there are some obstacles to it, especially if we're talking about like our Aschely and Xena and I and Nate, are we going to be somehow like supervising this? That feels like a little far-fetched. But if there are people listening or if there are people out there who come to us and say, I want to do this, I'm very happy to meet with people to share what we know, to share our practices, anything that we can do basically to help do that. But I do think that like really spinning something off is going to require someone besides us who's from that place in a way and or knows that place to do it. So I see Michael has his hand up. John, you had your hand up earlier, John Mackey. I don't know if you still wanted to ask a question, if you meant to put your hand down, but I thought I'd give you a chance to chime in if you wanted to.
John Mackey. I mean, just want to say profoundly moving. This was a really just beautiful reflection, and it's one of the more beautiful things I've heard in like recent months. And so I'm just so thank you for all you've done. And I guess one thing I was thinking when you were talking, both of you, and I guess I wasn't really explicitly thinking about it before, was like how this. Or how I'm wondering how you think about the practice of democracy and what you're doing. I mean, you're so generous, and like I'm kind of astounded by it. But I wonder, and I then of course there's also maybe some funding potential there as well. But I just would love to hear some reflection on how you're thinking about what this has to do with the practice of democracy, the challenges we're facing with democracy across the world.
So thanks for that question. It's funny. I wrote a book about life of the mind, which in some ways the audience for that book and the community that started that book is what started the Catherine Project. Because once I wrote it, people reached out to me and they wanted to do this thing, and I needed to be able to tell them something. And so it was during COVID, so we started stuff on Zoom. Um, in that book, I was really resistant to giving a political justification for the life of the mind, um, partly because I wanted to just hypothesis, and I was very interested. I still am very interested in cases where there's no obvious political upshot. So like you're like a political prisoner in Siberia, and you're learning languages with your fellow inmates, or you're writing poetry or something. There's no real, not necessarily any political upshot, and it's still worthwhile. So I wanted to make that argument really strong. The more time has gone on, the more I can see really the depths of the civic argument for liberal arts and the sense that it is necessary for democratic culture. So I don't want us to be reduced to that, but I also think, um, you know, and this is, I think, not at all original to me, but passivity in one's intellectual life, if you think that you can't know anything unless someone packages up the knowledge and feeds it to you, that's very dangerous. That's a recipe for kind of totalitarianism. And it's not a coincidence that our communities of learning are breaking down at the same time that our democracy, our democratic structures are breaking down. So I do think of this, and this again, very unoriginal, what I'm about to say. Tocqueville, in his beautiful account of democracy in America, talks about the importance of civic associations, of voluntary organizations. And we definitely, from the beginning, have conceived of ourselves that way. So we are a civic organization. We are a global organization, as Steve is pointing to, which is a bit of an awkward tension. But we are a voluntary organization. We are, to the extent that we can be, grassroots and self-governed. And we hope that it will help all of our communities if um, we develop the capacities to find common ground between ourselves and other people, and to talk about stuff that's serious and deep, and to really think for ourselves, and to honor each individual contribution to the table. So I do think of it that way, and if funding were to emerge that was tagged that way, I think we would welcome it, so long as it wasn't too conditioned. A lot of the big funding organizations, first of all, I think most foundations are dialing back on uh, just receiving applications. They want to do their own research and find their own grantees. But also, many foundations have a lot of conditions, and we want to preserve the thing that has built organically. So anyway, if you hear of something, please pass it along to Nate or to any of us. We'd love the support of Foundation, and it's definitely true that we have this political upshot, even though it lies in tension with us being, in some sense, globally available. But then again, probably every country in the world needs that kind of civic growth. So we're throwing out the seeds, and they grow where they will. So thanks so much for the question. Michael, I think, was next.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to speak. And of course, I would quickly like to echo some of the sentiments that have been expressed about, how valuable this project is and everything. I've only participated in two reading groups so far, but I have found it to, in some ways to be a transformative experience. But I wanted to just ask a couple of, I guess, more like nitty-gritty questions about like when you're, some of the challenges that I've seen in reading groups. Zena, you had talked about like the importance of community, but also how, and Jordan, how the project is growing quickly and the challenges of being in this kind of digital format. And I can't speak to the growth of the project or anything, but one of the challenges is like when you're in Zoom and you don't maybe if there's like 15 people in a group, I've certainly noticed that it's possible like 3 or 4 people never speak up the whole semester, pretty much. It's like you never hear from them. And then there can be a tendency for someone to dominate the conversation. And so on the principle of hospitality, it can be hard, like to know what exactly to do in that situation, or maybe just do nothing. But then people can kind of derail the conversation talking about like scholarly stuff, or quoting stuff in ancient Greek when like nobody in the group understands ancient Greek. I mean, those are just minor examples. So I'm just wondering, like how do you think it would be reasonable to, like, maybe trying to address those situations when they come up?
Yeah, so that's the perfect set of questions, and the kind of thing that we've talked about all the time from the beginning. So, how do we make sure? Because I think it is a drag on a group if people come and are totally silent. Like we don't want to be hostile to shy people. We love shy people, but if you're just someone just sitting in the group without speaking, drags down the energy of the group, and also that person doesn't is not learning as much as they would, and other people aren't learning from them. And likewise, I totally agree. The know-it-alls, they're a constant scourge to this kind of thing. And in both cases, I think the new initiative that Jordan mentioned, the training for leaders that's going to be taking place in this summer for the first time. Um, it's something that leaders can, with a bit of help and training and understanding, handle. So you want to figure out, and it's delicate. And I say this as someone who teaches, I teach at a 4-year institution with these same principles, and it takes practice to figure out. You want to include. Sometimes the know-it-all can respond to just a bit of jibing, a bit of correction, a bit of teasing even, and they can dial it back. Sometimes they can't, and they need to be dealt with a bit more clear boundary setting. Likewise, the techniques for drawing people into the conversation, as I've started to do in my middle age as a teacher, I say, hey, Jordan, you've been a bit quiet this last little while. What's on your mind? What do you think about this? Or whether you ask people to offer writing so that you can get into their something they've sent in advance, and you can say, "Oh, what we're talking about relates to your question. So do you want to help us see tied your question together with this thing that we've been talking about?" So these are all matters that will be helped by a regular training program, and by us in general just trying to figure out how to um, it has to do with the leaders of the groups. Um, it also has to do, I mean, I think it would be worse, honestly. All those problems would be worse if we didn't, and this is something else we think about, constantly try to communicate the spirit of the project in all the little ways. So we hope that because of the way the web pages, because of the way that we talk, because of the way that we communicate, because of the materials we send out, that perceptive people will notice the kind of thing that we're doing. And if they don't want to do it, they won't come. If they want to do something different. Um, that said, yeah. So the kinds of things you're complaining about are our everyday bread and butter practical problems. And the other thing I would just say, I think this maybe doesn't happen enough, although Jordan might disagree, but I think you can always, if you're having really serious trouble with your group, or even a little bit of trouble, first of all, reach out to the leader. And if you don't like how that conversation goes, reach it out to one of us. And we would love to talk to you about what's going on and see if there isn't a solution. Because sometimes I think there's a really serious problem that requires a more dramatic intervention. And that can't happen if the person doesn't takes for granted that the defect is part of the package. So we would just encourage open, honest communication with your group leader, and if necessary with us, to make sure that that stuff gets addressed. Because and also sometimes, and again, this is worth checking with your leader about, but the class belongs to you. So there are interventions that any member of the group can undertake. So you can say, oh, I don't know ancient Greek, so it's not really helpful to hear you rattle it off. Um, or you can just redirect back to the main question, um, or you can say, wow, I feel like everyone's talking from expertise and I've lost track of what we were talking about. Something like that. So feel free to take charge, and otherwise just to communicate openly, transparently, and clearly. Your problems are real problems. Everyone should be working to try to alleviate them, and you can be part of that. Casey, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing great. Let's see. I guess my question probably would be most directed towards Nate, which welcome aboard. Hi. Um, you mentioned that like you had a grant that's expiring for the core. Is there maybe a form like that we could direct maybe potential people we know with maybe too much money? Not that I know that many people with too much money, be like, hey, here's this page if you want to consider doing that. Here's this spirit. Like, is there a page like that just to kind of, I mean, yeah, we can talk about the project ourselves and evangelize it, but like actually a link I might be helpful to find new donors that way, like donors on a bigger scale. Not that individual donations aren't important, but on a bigger scale. I was just curious if anything like that exists.
You're talking about like sharing information about the project with other people and like a concise.
Basically being like,
Yeah.
hey, we have this great thing going on, but now give it, well, we don't have to even bring in our political climate, but being like, we could always use more money and it's growing really fast. Do you want to be part of this? Like,
Yeah.
make this part of your life, like anything like that.
That's a good question. I'll give some thought to maybe there are ways we could concisely communicate some of the things that we're aspiring to do or the ways that people could help. And I would certainly welcome conversations too, like if you have ideas or suggestions, and this is you or anyone within the project, like I'm always interested in talking to people about their perceptions of the Catherine Project, like what kinds of things should we be communicating better so that we can take advantage, of people who might be interested in supporting the kind of work that we're doing. So all that to say, reach out anytime. I'd be happy to talk, and I will also give some consideration to the idea that you just shared. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Also, if you can also put anyone with too much money directly in touch with me if you think I could charm them. I'm happy.
Right? I don't know that many, but maybe there are a couple I know out there. It's like, hey, you mentioned this was sounded kind of cool before. Now's your chance to like really jump in.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Casey. Daria.
Good evening, and I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for four of you for organizing this project. It's a huge inspiration and it gives meaning to life. And my question would be about I'm looking for maybe an access for a chance to learn from your leadership on how you organize the project, and maybe there might be some guidance for how to run projects like yours seriously. I'm from Russia, now I'm in Belgrade, and I went to Sacred Heart University in Connecticut, and I had Catholic intellectual tradition, and I learned about McLuhan, Technopoly, and after that, I really wanted to share it with my like Russian-speaking people because we culturally had a really good translating tradition, having great authors translating the Odyssey, Alice in Wonderland. But today, for example, Technopoly, Amusing Ourselves to Death, it's not even translated to Russian, and I think it's such a shame. And in my experience, in my opinion, I think these books are very like can give really good insights for why it's so important to read in the age of technology and engage with cultural past. And I have tried to start, I would say, a serious book club. And I developed curriculum where I started from Technopoly, then Amusing Ourselves to Death, then a jump into A Brave New World. And after that, and I felt that these three books would explain people well enough why it's so cool why it's important to engage with mythology, and then we can jump into Odyssey. But on my way of like creating a small group where we can learn these materials, um, I uh, I was basically um, brought back by organizational details because I was thinking I was trying to follow your project model and like not to take any money and make it donation free, but I think because I have like no name and people have received it as a weakness rather than a generosity. So yeah, and after that, I was on a stage when I was thinking about marketing, and then I was like, maybe I should like go more on YouTube, do a podcast, and then you now mentioning why it's not like the logic of not doing it. It makes so much sense to me. But so like I have this idea, and I really like wanted to bring the knowledge that like circling in America to like Russian speaking people. But I was held back by these things. And I think it would be like so beneficial to have um, support from you for like regional leaders or for those who inspire to be one. So like support on how to approach, like how to turn this project into a serious thing. So it's not perceived just as a book club. So yes, that's what I wanted to say.
So thank you so much for sharing that, and I appreciate. I'm hearing the international theme so far in the conversation. I think we're happy to meet with you. We often have conversations with people who are starting out, so we can meet with you in a smaller group to just talk about your situation and what might work. One of the things that we can do for you is, because a lot of people reach out to us for one reason or another, we can connect you with other people who might have similar interests who can help. So, it must be said, I tried doing stuff like this a few times before the right moment came, and I was at the right stage of my life, and I had the right kind of network to support it. And I had this, sort of miraculously, sort of the peak of the website formerly known as Twitter, where we could just reach people, all kinds of people, really easily, really fast, which you can't even use really that platform for anymore at all. So we were very lucky, and a lot of things came together at once. But we know people. For instance, we have another person in Belgrade. We have someone else we've talked to recently who's been running groups for Russian speakers, and we'd love to put you people in touch so that you have some people to work out ideas with, and also to talk about, to help you think about what you're doing. I mean, I think it's the question about not charging has always dogged us. I mean, there's often people who think that we should charge. So I know what you're talking about. It's not that it's foreign to the US. We've definitely come across people who don't think it can be serious because it's free. But we've from time to time it comes up again, and we consider charging, and then we decide not to, and then so so it's very likely that an organization like this could charge money for what they do, and it could still succeed in many of the aims. I don't think I think for us it won't work, but at least not at the moment. There's no reason at the moment. I don't think any of us are leaning towards charging. But that doesn't mean that another organization couldn't, just for instance. So anyway, please just feel free to reach out and set up a meeting with us sometime. And we're happy to connect you with people who might be sympathetic and to support you any other way we can with advice and help. Because we know that how great the need is for this kind of thing. And we hear from lots of people who are trying to do things like this. And it's hard to do. It's harder than it looks. And we've been in many ways very, 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 very lucky in terms of the timing and I mean, I asked this grad student at St. John's to run the project who, like, what did I know whether it would work? It turned out to be the brilliant Jordan pointer who's, built everything from scratch. But that was very lucky. Like it might not have happened. So, anyway, I'll have to say that we're here for you. We want to support you, and we want to have a conversation with you about whatever any way we can help you in what you're doing. So have courage. You can do it.
The other thing I would say about this is that I don't think it can be overstated how organically, or in some respects, how slowly we built things. That is to say, like 5 years to get to this. I think like in startup business land, this is not impressive to anyone. Like, um, of course, it's like a very personal and intense thing. So I think it really is huge. But like we started there were like 40, 50 people or something at first. But you could start even smaller. Like I've been running in-person groups in Bloomington, sort of out of under the aegis of the project for 2 years now. And I've only finally gotten to the point where there's like maybe too many people for one group consistently signing up. So now I'm ready. Like we could start another reading group in Bloomington. So I just want to, I know that's not maybe not helpful if like what you really want is to accelerate something or to create a livelihood. There are obstacles here for sure, but I do think there's something to be said for just taking like a long view and just like building something really organically from the ground up. And by the ground up, I mean with the people around you that are really serious about it.
Thank you. I totally agree because when I heard today that it took you 5 years, I realized that I have to double it at minimum and maybe like 10 years, and it would be a good result. So yeah.
I mean, one key that Jordan reminds me of, I'll just pass it on for anyone who wants to do anything like this. One sort of key thing is for something like this, you want every piece of the project to be worthwhile. So you want it, even if it's smallest, to be worth doing. So from my point of view, a reading group with 5 people that meets in person and reads about something serious, that's totally worth doing. So of course, bigger in many ways is better since there's a hunger for it. But you want the building blocks to each have their own heft to them. So there's no that's I think part of what it means to have an organic project is that each stage of growth is keeping that same thing central, which is obviously worthwhile. So you're keeping the value right in packed into the practice, and you're not um, you're not writing. We didn't, I mean, I did actually write some plans from scratch back in the day, but none of those things quite worked out the way that it was supposed to. So it really is a matter of working with the material that you have and building what's good. Dylan Doherty.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity. I had a really kind of small comment. Just I was kind of when you talked about the association people have with seriousness and charging money. Um, One of the things when I initially kind of signed up applied for one of the core courses was that I kept thinking there's no way that this is free because it was I was trying to find I was just waiting for like the foot to drop and to get the big price tag for it. um and when I kind of realized and fully came to believe that, oh, actually this is a free program, I was really blown away. And so I think in a way, for me at least, that like the seriousness is amplified by the fact that it's free, but it wasn't advertised. At least to me, I was like trying to like look up information about pricing. But I felt things like that there's an application process at all, like is a really big communicator of seriousness. And so that was just a simple comment about that. That's just something that came to mind.
Thank you. It's wonderful to hear that. Yeah, we like it. I think we like it to be free. So but it is a sign of how, and part of it is this mistrust which you're communicating, which we all have, which is there's something online that are offering something. It's like, well, what's the catch? Are they buying my information? Are they like, so we really, it's a wonderful side effect if we can just try to reinforce the prospect that there are out there people who actually believe in stuff and are not just trying to fleece you for something. So really what we want from you, really it's true. What we want is for you to read some good books and learn and make some friends, like, and think seriously about something. And yeah, that's why we do it. No one's pulling in the big bucks here. So thanks so much for testifying that. Barbara Dooley.
Hi, I'm one of those people that have been like Daria and approaching Aschely and Jordan because of a potential project. And it just became really obvious to me because next year is my 50th year college reunion. And we have been meeting for a year on Zoom, different class members, and discovered that, none of us knew each other before. And we're really sorry about that, because we're very different and we've had these interesting lives and experiences. But in the end, we need something more, and we need some reason to connect. And we already have the basis of a community, and we came from an academic and intellectual tradition. And we're finding right now, because of what happened tragically in Providence, that there's many levels of community that we are exploring, and that this kind of endeavor can pay off in so many ways in the larger community that we're already a part of, that we've essentially, most of us, ignored for 50 years. And it's a little different than what Daria wants to do in Belgrade, but it's the same thing. As you have to build a community, or you have to find one that's already there and introduce a new tradition in it. And I am proceeding as part of our gift to that community, as trying to start this project in the context of that community. So thank you, because it's been such a great part now of my experience, and I'm taking all that good vibe and I'm trying to pass it on. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope that your endeavor is successful in every way. And so it was awful to hear that
Yeah.
that story. Yeah, no, I think part of what happens when I think I can't tell you how many, every now and then I look at Substack, it's always full of pieces about how the internet has changed our lives. But one way I think that is, again, not original to me, but we think that if it's, and this is paradoxical, I know, for an online organization like Catherine Project, but we think that if it doesn't exist online, it's somehow not real. Like we've somehow gotten a distorted sense of reality. Whereas in fact, the point of the internet is to support whatever is going on in real life, in real communities, face-to-face communities. So we'd love it. I'd be thrilled to know that we were a part of helping to restore a bit of that, like, I don't know how to call it, like it's almost like an entrepreneurial spirit where you want to find ways for people to connect in person that are going to endure and be passed on to the next generation, and that are doing things that we need our local communities to do. So anyway, thanks for sharing that. We might be at the point, Jordan, what do you think of turning off mutes and letting people talk? Are we at that point yet, or is it too big? 65?
There's no queue, so if
Yeah.
you want to say something, go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and the queue hasn't even been that packed. So yeah, feel free to just unmute and speak as if you were in a Catherine Project group.
What dates were you thinking about for this training in Annapolis for leaders of groups? Do you guys have any dates picked out this summer?
It's
Just curious. I don't know about dude. I just didn't know if
it's
you had to find
it's
out.
it's very close. That's all I could say. It's June. I think we're starting in June, but there's a practical problem that keeps emerging. So,
Good enough for me. I'm always
but it's
behind.
very close. It will happen. It will happen. It will happen in June. It will happen in Annapolis. It will happen in St. John's. It's just there's a little wrinkle, and it's and just so it's clear, I'm the problem. So don't let anyone else fool you. But we're trying to find the best week for me. So anyone else want to speak up? You don't put you don't even have to put stuff in the chat. You can just speak. Then you can hear your voice.
I have a really nosy question. I'm just curious to hear a bit more about what the process is like for reviewing applications because you have so many applications to process. And I kind of always wonder, like, do you have a file on each person and like do you have to write notes about like other notes about like how much I participated? And I'm just kind of curious to hear a little bit, like whatever you're willing to share, Aschely and Jordan, about like how you process um, applicants, and when you're dealing with 3,000 applicants, what do you remember about like someone like me?
Do you want to try and answer this, Ashley? I don't know how your internet is.
Yeah, can you hear me okay? Okay, so this is one thing that we would like to work on. This is one of the technological projects that is currently in the works. I think we would eventually like each applicant to have a kind of dedicated account. And that way there would be in our system a history of participation kind of ready to hand for us when we're reviewing applications. Right now, we sort of cobble together your history with spreadsheets, a kind of CRM database, and the enrollment software that this generous volunteer has built us. And so triangulating between those three things, we do get a sense of your past participation. But one of our goals is that all of that information is consolidated into one single place and would accompany whatever new application has come through. It would all be there for us to see. To your more general question, what I will say is that Jordan and I singly, we read all of your statements of interest, and we sometimes will read them multiple times depending on whether or not we were, for instance, able to place you in your first course. So we dedicate probably more than 3 months out of the year just reading the applications and trying to put people in their highest preference. So does that answer your question to some extent, Abigail?
Yeah, thank you. I'm so blown away by how much work goes into just reading all of the applications and processing them. So thank you for all you do.
So thank you, Abigail, for helping me out because I'm always astonished at how much work these people do, and I think one of the reasons why we need lots of money is so that we can have more people to help and also buy really good software and things like that. Anyway, it's great to see you, Abigail. Thanks for coming.
I just want to mention though that I think like this is actually a huge question for us because some of you might be uh, imaginative or technologically inclined, so you've come to a similar sort of realization, or you have a similar idea to one that has been proposed to us more times than I can count, which is, well, why don't you just feed all the applications to ChatGPT and the preferences, and it will just spit out the placements. And given, as Ashley said, how much of an investment goes into having human beings do it, uh, you know, this becomes a very serious question, especially if we're talking about growth. Because one thing that I think is clear to me, at least, is that you can't really like scale the project if you have to pay people. You have to like basically have full-time staff reading all the applications as it grows. So I don't know what the answer is to this. I've toyed with the idea, never I've never gotten past the really the toying phase, but I've toyed with this idea of like forming volunteer community review committees where like the community would choose who gets to be in the group. This has some like attendant issues that I'm not sure quite how to solve, but yeah, something like just having it be like some part of it at least be part like the community takes responsibility for it, and that could probably like keep up with growth. So I just want to throw that out there as fodder for us all to think about.
That seems I mean, if we think by analogy with mainstream institutions, like the admissions committee, it's a group of people that read applications and talk about them. Seems feasible. So we can keep thinking about that.
Especially if you anonymize them, with having kind of like community, if you have a kind of community process for assessing them and having, you're trying to have relatively straightforward guidelines for like what you're looking for kind of in the applications. I think those two things would help, at least in making a community approach feasible.
Yes, I think and Casey has just volunteered to take the lead.
It's the least I can do. I know
Meet,
I overwrite, but you guys have gotten like full novels each time, so it's
meet the
my
new
way of
director
giving
of
back.
admissions, Casey Bales, volunteer director.
There's actually software for that. Is that I am part of a committee that reviews short plays for admission to a theater festival. And the platform allows these to be distributed. It's anonymous. You don't know who it is. You rate, you make comments, and then this goes across the number of people. And that way there is the part for this is that the plays are assigned. So there's still a team of people that has to decide amongst the reviewers how these are assigned. It's not a random process.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that there can be a diversity, but the platform exists.
Yeah.
So that software is already available, and it's something that you could see that if this scaled, it's a theoretical possibility.
Yeah. No, there's that makes a lot of sense that there would be such a platform because it's not so
Yeah.
different from a peer review process or
Right.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, may I switch gears to asking questions about how the decisions are made about doing nonfiction prohibition against third-party sources? I fully understand why in the fictional groups you really want just a reading of the text and digesting it. Of my five all wonderful Catherine Project groups, you guys have done a fabulous job in both reader selection and instructor selection. The one nonfiction tutorial reading group that I've done also very good, but really stumbled on much of the work is in dialogue with other outside texts that I felt we kind of stumbled on that. Perhaps pedagogically you could give some more color to, and the group very militantly said, no, 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 this is a Catherine project. We're not going to discuss that. Well spirited, but could you give some color to that decision making?
Can I ask what book it was?
Sure, it was complicated. So we did Adam Smith's Theory of Moral Sentiments.
Okay.
There's a lot of Francis Hutchins. Again, we'll belabor all the possible interactions there, but of course he is also giving lots of recitation of historic incidents for which additional color I think would have benefited in a non-monopolistic or know-it-all way.
Well, I can speak to the principle, and then Jordan or Ashley can talk about any particular applications or any particular decisions that they made along these lines. But the principle is, it's partly we don't offer book groups on anything. So they tend to be what we call great books. And part of what defines a great book as a great book is that you can learn from it independent of its context. So, and very, very many of the books that we read are in dialogue with other things. But one of the things that I think makes what's called great books education so powerful is that there's so much in a book of this kind that there's plenty to talk about, like untold depths and complexities to work out without ever getting into the outside context. So it's not it's true that part of the principle is a simple pragmatic one, that is we don't want to use expertise because expertise can't be evaluated by a layperson. So we want to privilege the kind of understanding that brings with it its own justification, that doesn't require a master's or a PhD or a research degree to know how to evaluate the evidence. Because without that, the group in the classroom is going to have some people who know and some people who don't. And you could get into a dispute that no one could resolve. You know, if someone said, well, I think it's Hutchinson, and someone else says, well, no, I think it's Hume. Like it's not resolvable, and it doesn't help everyone in the group. So something like theory of moral sentiments, the way I would envision a group like that going really well would be people really chewing through the kinds of examples and the way that the book is put together. And I think you could learn a ton about it that way without knowing much about the context. And that's in that case, no one's saying that like somehow there is no history or there is no background or that Adam Smith was the first, never read anything. Of course he did. And I think at a certain level of understanding and scholarship, that stuff is really useful. But it's been my experience that, my long experience that the kind of training that people now need is that like struggle with a book, figure out like it's being dropped in a jungle with a machete. You've got to try to carve your own way out, and those secondary sources, whether they're introductory or whether they're historical, they can function as shortcuts. It's always easier to come up with a fact or than it is to ask a question. It's always easier to state an opinion than it is to ask a question. So we create a certain amount of discomfort on purpose in order to put pressure on the most serious kind of reading and the deepest kind of thinking, which is a kind of prerequisite for doing the reading well once you know all the context and once you have all the sources. So it's not so it's always a struggle for our participants and sometimes for our leaders to set stuff at the door. But it is our long experience that this is what makes a good discussion and also what really produces that kind of formation in reading and thinking that is hardest to get. Like you can't, there's, I think, probably wonderful books written about every book that we've led groups on that bring in all kinds of background information and reveal all kinds of things and involve sophisticated levels of interpretation. But there's something about you alone figuring something out for yourself, like asking a question and using the text to answer it, that you can't learn that way. That's the principle. You can feel free to come back if that's not satisfying.
Well, again, I just want to say it was still a very good reading group. We definitely did at the expense of understanding, Smith's situatedness in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
We were wrestling with paragraphs and the leader did a fine job. I still think that there are points where just it would hitch, where people are trying to figure out something that is a historical incident from which there is people were afraid to even bring up a footnote from their reference.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps in my peanut gallery would be give the leaders a discretion about what additional context may be done. I found in the most historically possibly tempting book to get out, the Magic Mountain Reading Group, which also was fantastic, But there was actually no gravitational need to explain, well, this
Yeah.
is what happened with Austro-Hungary, during
Right.
World War One.
Right.
So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the answer. And again, all the groups have been just fantastic. It's the only.
No, the leaders do have that discretion. So
Okay.
I've definitely done that in the groups I've led where I've said either, I mean, this kind of discretion, this looks like, so here's one kind of comment. This looks like a question that this group can't answer with just the text, So let's not try, in other words, to abstract out something. If that's your best guess, I think that's a reasonable thing to say. And actually, anyone in a group can say that, not just the leader. But also, if it's not meant to be barbarous, right? I think that's in our guidelines for discussion. You're not supposed to do anything terrible. So if there's a concrete piece of well-sourced information that's just going to clear something up, like say it. Like just say it. But that's not like it's delicate because the temptation to do it is so much broader than the occasions when that's really true. There's something simple, well-sourced, well-known, with which the person has great confidence and understanding, which is just going to clear something up. Doesn't happen often, but when it happens, you should just do it, or the leader should do it. They have that discretion. So, thanks for talking about it. Great. It's a perennial, one of the perennial questions, like the other ones we talked about earlier.
I just have a quick question. Are you ever tempted? Like, I love the open structure, kind of just bring your raw experience. Everybody's on the same, equal playing field. Nobody's paying. We're not customers. We all kind of own the group. But are you ever tempted to provide like non-book specific guidance as to like how to read how to do close reading at a deeper level?
I think we do have some materials. We try to keep them minimal. But don't we have materials? We have guidelines for discussion. Do we have guidelines for reading, Jordan? I thought we did.
We have notes in the reader handbooks that maybe people read them. I don't know. We don't, yeah. I know it's a big PDF document, everyone's favorite thing to cull through.
It's hard to do. Um, that is, we, so when I was I taught a couple of philosophy courses in prison years ago, and I read Plato's Republic both times. It was Intro to Philosophy, and we read Plato's Republic. And I knew that the students were not going to be familiar with this way of doing things at all. And so I looked around for something they could read that would help. And I was like, oh, you know what? This Mortimer Adler book, How to Read a Book, turns out to be pretty good. Like it has a lot of really good advice, kind of explains the kind of thing you're doing. But people hate that book. I mean, like if you assign because it's so bossy. I mean, it's how to read a book. I mean, it's just so patronizing. And he says things like, don't enjoy literature too much, and that just sends some people off the deep end. So it's something, I think we'd like to, and I think we have to some extent collected materials to read about the kind of thing that we do. And if we had just a bit more bandwidth, I think Jordan and Aschely, who both collect these things, little essays on liberal education and essays on close reading, we could collect them all on the website for further reading. I mean, there's not a reason why we couldn't do that, except it's just a little extra time. It's a project we haven't gotten to yet. But you're saying that makes me think that we should do it, and maybe we should try to see if we can't. I think we have an intern coming on, right? That's a good intern's job to put together a list of stuff that we think might be helpful to understand what we're doing.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you.
Brady, did you, and no shame if you didn't read the handbook. I'm just curious, like if you did read the handbook, did you think did you find that to be basically insufficient or yeah, I'm just curious how helpful you found that. Yeah.
It was a while ago. I may have looked over it. I know I looked at some stuff. I think, I don't know if it was St. John's or one of the other reading groups had kind of like a little primer on how to do close readings and things to think about, but it wasn't, it was a long time ago that I looked at those materials. I guess I was thinking like in session two, maybe the group leader could say, hey, think about looking at structure or this or that, as you're going without being too prescriptive, I guess. Might be nice, but I don't know.
I feel like this too is something which we hope that the having regular formation for leaders is going to help with. Like if they, if it's hard. An online community is really a struggle because we don't get together. A lot of us have been associated with St. John's, which helps a lot. A lot of it is just like people using stuff from St. John's, but there's very many people who've had nothing to do with St. John's or even any regular Great Books program or any liberal arts college. So to try to find ways that we can develop some kind of loose shared understanding, like a shared understanding that is open enough to allow for people to have their own distinctive points of view and their own distinctive way of doing things. But it's difficult to do online, and it's something that I hope more leadership development is going to really help with. Like if everyone knows it's okay to say, to think about, oh, how can I help communicate to this particular group of students what we're doing? Maybe they need to read something extra. So yeah, it's really helpful to hear this in that context as we start to plan this thing for the summer.
I wonder if like a modeling approach would be helpful for this, kind of instead of the bossy, you're reading books wrong, here's how you read it. Just, just kind of like from my experience, like teaching philosophy and teaching students about argument, like where they don't know what an argument is, where like they're really starting from that level, and they like there's even fuzzy ideas about what reading is. And I think kind of reading things with students, I've found helpful kind of in the past, like not like look out for these things, but more just like here's an example of me like actually like reading something and like what I would do. Um, and I've personally found that as a helpful way to communicate these kinds of ideas without like saying like I'm going to show you the right way. Like just I'm going to show you like a way to like approach this. Um, and even I took like a modern poetry class in college a million years ago. I don't know anything about poetry. And just the professor like reading the poems with us and like him stopping and like explaining his thought process was like just infinitely helpful to like get into a style of reading that I otherwise have no connection to. And so I wonder if that would avoid the bossiness of something like how to read a book, where it's more just like, here's a modeling of the process instead of like rules, like do it this way.
I mean, that's our dream, right? So it's one of the reasons why we, for the core program, try to draw in people with a bit more academic experience as leaders so that they have some modeling that they can offer. But we also, the dream would be for the community to have and I think it does work, even though it could be strengthened in many ways, for the community to teach by example. That is, if you're in a good group that doesn't use secondary literature, that's going to teach you more than any handbook could teach you about how to do it. And then if you're in more than one group, that'll give you some more, and it's done slightly differently, then you'll learn more. So we hope that something like this is already going on. And I think it is already going on. And yeah, the modeling is something we try to do in the core program, something we'll try to do in the leader formation groups in the summer. And yeah, it's a great suggestion. I mean, that's, I think, what education is basically is, you see what other people are doing and you imitate it and then you make it your own and then you combine it with all the other things that you've seen that you like, come up with a distinctive approach. Anything else out there, guys? Comments, questions, complaints? We haven't had any really good complaints
I
this time. Like I want
yeah,
where was the lady who told us the Life of the Mind seminar wasn't good? I want that one back. Yeah.
I also just want to
Oh,
second Jordan's question that he asked in the beginning about um, if you can feel the size of the project growing at all as a participant in the reading groups or just in terms of your engagement with us. But I second Zena's call for complaints too.
and Abigail, in answer to your question in chat, I did mean the orientation. Uh, I don't know why I called it that. But
Because you're
I
tired.
I do have a quick question, not necessarily, I mean, not a complaint, but since earlier there was some discussion of the application process, and Zena, you said that the number one thing is like zeal, right? And I think one of the great things about the project is there's a wide range of offerings. And every time I read through the list, I discover some book that I've never heard about, right? But it's hard to like, I don't know, to show zeal for something that I don't know anything about. So then maybe I will tend to gravitate more towards something that I'm like more familiar with. I don't know. So I guess how do you see that trade-off between like exploring new things and then also like maintaining the zeal?
So I feel like the zeal that matters the most is a pretty general zeal. It's a zeal for learning for its own sake. Um, and I think, you know, there's a newer endeavor that's just something that people from Catherine Project were involved in early on called the Matthew Struthers Center for the Examined Life. It's a little in-person community that meets in the Catskills throughout the year. They have 1 week-long residential programs. Anyway, they don't tell their participants what they're reading in advance, so they can't choose the book that their course is going to be on. And that I think is in a certain way kind of the dream, because one of the things, and it's also a bit the way we do things at St. John's, even though the reading list is public, no one ever knows who signs up to be a student at St. John's. No one ever knows what it means to read Ptolemy or Spinoza's Ethics, or and we read a lot of stuff that it's just not possible to have a grip on in advance or a desire to read. So one thing that I think we'd aspire to, and I think a lot of our participants, a lot of our readers do share, is this like, I can read anything. That was one of the most touching pieces of feedback I ever got about the Life of the Mind seminar is when the participants said, now I know I can read anything, and enjoy it and learn from it. So it's that general zeal that we're looking for, not specific zeal. And of course, it takes time to develop it if you're not used to it. I mean, we have such a culture of curation by personal taste, right? Like your Spotify curation. And if you like this, you like this. If you like this, you like this. The idea that you might just like stuff that's good is not, it's not normal. So I think you'll find if you stretch out towards something that you don't know much about and just try it, when you have the energy and the bandwidth to do that, I think you'll find that you enjoy it. And then I think you'll find that the zeal becomes more general. And in fact, at this point in my life, like I, I'm happiest when the less familiar the thing I'm reading is. So, um, like if in my day job at St. John's, I end up teaching a lot of math and science. It's not my wheelhouse. I love it more than I love reading poetry, which in fact, like I love and I have some experience doing. So the weird, perverse things start to emerge like that after a certain period of time, where you might actually want like the reverse Spotify feed, like tell me all the things you think I'll like least, and then listen to that. So anyway, I think it's a great question, and I think it is, yeah, it's one of the ways that we're the tradition we're drawing on. It has a richness that we're not fully communicating yet, and we're working on it.
this is also the thinking behind the ranked preference application that has like 5 options. So like it's understood that your fourth or fifth preference may be like Spinoza's Ethics for you, or you're like, "Oh, I heard of that book. Yeah." And then it's a question like, what are you going to do? If we do have to place you there just because like the first three things you chose were wildly popular or something. So this happens to people.
And I have to say, the word the Spinoza's Ethics just popped out, but it is one of the books I'm required to teach regularly. That when I read it the first time, I was like, I have no idea what this book is doing or what it's for. Like, and I had a PhD in philosophy. Like, I was already experiencing it. I was like, this book is beyond me. And every time I go back to it, I see a little more about it. I learn a little more. I appreciate it a little more. It becomes more rich, more illuminating, more exciting. So that really does happen. But it does require kind of, you have to come to expect that there might be a good period of time where you don't really know why you're doing it and you're not getting a lot of immediate gratification. And that's challenging, especially for something that you're doing for free that doesn't offer you any credit. So it's one of the challenges that we have. But I do encourage people to try it. Just don't assume that because it's taking you a while to get into something that there's nothing in it for you. There's a lot in all of these books. So
I love Richard's suggestion in the chat. So I'm gonna,
I'm feeling lucky.
I'm gonna seriously consider this.
I think that's I love it. I love it. Because I think also that would become a kind of a flex, a reader flex. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't need to choose. Just put me in any group.
The problem is the schedules. The
Yeah.
schedules are so variable. Yeah.
Well, we could have any group that meets at this time.
Yeah.
Or you could do ranked preference. The I'm feeling lucky version could be ranked preference in terms of time and day.
If there was more machine intervention and looking at doing some kind of provisional, like here are the yeah, with the applications, then this would be possible. I don't
That's it.
know.
Well, since you were looking for complaints, I'll really stretch. Why don't we know who the instructors are in the classes in advance? This is the closest variant of the I'm getting lucky hypothesis.
Yes.
Again, home runs all 5 times, but I'm just sort of curious as you guys think about scaling and the maintenance of the quality and making sure assignments are a fit. I'm just curious in the thinking there. At St. John's, presumably you know who the instructors are when you go in. No. Okay.
Well, because the curriculum is fixed, there's multiple sections of each course, and you're put in a course without being able to request an instructor. So it is actually a feature of the St. John's. It has a number of benefits. So it is something it's intentional. It's an intentional structure. One thing is, you know, especially at the beginning, you don't. I didn't want it to be Xena Hit show, so people sign up for courses with me, and then they can't get in, and then they're upset because they're with someone who they haven't heard of, who actually might be better at leading a discussion than I am, you know. But in general, we didn't want that cult of celebrity and the idea that because a lot of it is we're trying to cultivate a kind of intellectual freedom and self-sufficiency where you don't you don't need a hotshot teacher to read these books. You don't need a big name to read the books. You just need good people to read with and to rely on your own devices more. So there's a lot to be learned, I think, from I mean, we want the best leaders we can get. Like it's not we wouldn't intentionally make someone suffer, but there's a lot to be learned from trying to work with a group where you're not sure, like the leader might be not the person who you'd choose. because it puts more pressure on you and on your fellow students to make the group what it will. And that's one of the reasons why we, in general, have open-ended groups, and why every participation of each person is really important. So there's a sound pedagogical reason for doing it that way, to just have people focused on the book. Like, what do you want to read? Or the practice. Like, I want to go through the core program so that I can learn this practice of reading and conversation, and inquiry. It just takes it off the celebrity culture. And yeah, I have to say I've got no regrets about that. I think we'd charge money for courses before we would advertise the leaders. Um, it introduces competition between leaders, which is not necessarily helpful. There are contexts which I'm a big fan of competition, but this isn't one of them. Um, and it would also create uh, all kinds of practical difficulties. We have this huge demand, right? So if people decide that they only want to do it not just on a particular book, but with a particular leader, then the demand gets skewed, and we can't actually. We have more dissatisfied people than we would otherwise have. That sounds like a funny thing to say, but I think it's true. Anyway, but thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Any kind of questions for, like, we should call it like questions for the lawgiver or something. And a lot of this stuff, I like, even though I might be the lawgiver, I it's stuff I've made up based on the institutions I've been in. So who the original lawgiver is, I don't know. Who invented the idea that you don't choose your teachers or know what books you're reading in advance? I don't know who that was, but I find it good and useful.
I have another question for the lawgiver. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, I don't have an exact question, but I just have a comment about how in almost every group I've been in, there's been someone who's gone to like the first meeting and then never come back. Or gone to a couple meetings and never come back. And I don't have an exact question about this, but I'm just wondering, like, is there anything other readers can do about this, or that the group leader can do about this, or any way you try and address that? Because I know it's really clear in the application that you really want people to fully commit to something, but it's still something I've encountered a lot.
Jordan and Ashley could actually talk about this. I have to log off pretty soon, but
Okay.
I'll say this, that it's another of our perpetual difficulties. So, and we think it's probably directly related to the courses being free. So one of the reasons why we sometimes feel pressure to charge money is because it would require a bit more commitment from the people who sign up. As people pay for something and they're like, I'm gonna get my money's worth, so I'm going to every single meeting, or at least I'm gonna go to half of them before I drop out. So it's a trade-off. We don't. It makes it hard. Takes longer for the groups to gel. It's not. I don't. In this case, I think there's really no advantage to attrition. The only thing is, it's just seems to be a necessary consequence of not charging. Does that sound right, Jordan and Ashley?
I don't know if this is a necessary advantage. Sorry if that was the word you used just a moment ago, but I will say this. I think some attrition, if we've talked a lot about this word serious has come up often tonight. And I think in some ways this is a good sign. It comes up often when we talk about the project. And I don't think it's just a poverty of language. I think it's because it captures something. Well, it captures a lot of things, but one of the things that it's capturing here is that, like, this is serious because, as Zena said, and as we talk about a lot, like, when you read these books and you're open to them and you really try to understand what they could be saying, and you try to understand it in such a way that this book might really have something to tell you about your own life, so that it's not just a historical artifact, or it's not just some kind of like alien curiosity or something. Um, there's a real and when you do this in conversation with other people, where they can also develop those points or make them even more emphatic, um, and bring certain questions to the fore of you. This can be uncomfortable. it's serious because what you are taking on, if you if you do this wholeheartedly and you're open in a certain respect, is unpredictable. And I don't want to give that up. I think that's probably the greatest strength of the project. I think a necessary consequence of that is that some people are going to get uncomfortable and or they just are not going to be in a place in their life where they're able to basically commit to that. Like they don't have the time, just on a practical level, whatever. I want the project to walk some kind of median between being open enough so that we invite people to that activity, but also flexible and recognizing that while we invite them to do it, not everyone is going to be able to really take that invitation up. But we'll give them a shot. They can come in the door. So I've never thought of like trying to get the attrition rate to zero as a good thing for the project. This is why we over enroll all the groups from the beginning. Like, I don't think 15 people is actually like the best size if everyone is an active participant. I think it's probably closer to 10 or 12. Um, Now, I think Abigail, your question is there's a part of this question which is harder to answer, which is like the people that really are open to this or they're walking away for reasons that we could try to address better. By initiating people into what we're doing, like with some kind of guidance about how to read it, stuff like that. Those are real questions. But I just want to add that piece, which is that there's always going to be attrition of some sort, and I think it would be a mistake to try to like eliminate it.
I'm happy to say that Jordan is now on fire, so I'm gonna now capably leave it in his hands because the way he's talking is preaching. So. And also, I have to go to dinner with my mom. But it's a pleasure talking to all of you, and thanks for everything that you bring to the project. And check in anytime, reach out. I'm happy to talk to anyone about anything. Good night.
Good night, Zena.
Thank you all.
I
Happy
also have to
holidays.
leave. I'm very sorry. I didn't anticipate that our meeting would go so strong for so long. And I too booked a dinner with my parents. Thank you all for coming. And it's been delightful to hear all of your thoughts. And I'll look forward to listening to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you.
Two of our lawgivers are gone, but do you want to ask your question, Dylan?
Oh, that's right. One of the things that she mentioned was that like y'all don't record sessions, you don't have a podcast, and that really appeals to me. And I was just kind of curious if that was an intentional decision from the beginning, or I'd be curious just to hear more about that decision and how intentional it was, or if it's something that just developed as the project developed.
So the decision to record meetings or have a podcast specifically, or is there like a broader, are we talking about something more?
I guess to use a word that makes me nauseous, like the decision not to produce content
Yeah.
as part of this, and to like it sounded like it was like an intentional decision to like not go down that road, and to keep it more kind of like it's more conversational. It's not about producing something to watch later, but it's about kind of engaging in the now. And I'm just curious if that was something that was part of kind of like the initial like planning stages of this, or if that's something that y'all came to that realization kind of as the project has developed.
Yeah, I think that was uh always part of the mission or the idea of the project. And it was that we weren't gonna I think content, this idea of like that there's content and even the way that this is an expression I have heard before, like people talk about educational content. Um, we really like wanted to do something that was extremely opposed to that whole idea that there's like educational content. Because content sounds like a necessarily sort of external thing, or if it's not external, it's something that's like transferable. Like we can just sort of like we can move the content around. Like the teacher can provide the content, students can take it in, absorb it or whatever. And this to me is part of like a kind of vision of learning or a vision of like human flourishing that is that's deeply problematic. So yes, there was always like this sense that like whatever we were going to do, and it should also be said that like, you know, as we mentioned earlier in the meeting, the project started so small. We had such limited resources. In some ways, we've always had limited resources. Like we also just have to be really focused. So there's a neat like correspondence there. It's like on the one hand, the thing that we care about, the thing that we're really focused on is a very active kind of learning, like putting people in a room or in a space somehow with like other people, and they can read a book and talk about a book together, and maybe do some writing and read it. But all of that is supposed to be active, and you're supposed to take responsibility. It's it's too easy, I think, with like a podcast or something. You just like let the content wash over you or whatever. It's hard to see how that is what part that plays in the kind of educational activity that we were focused on. I remember there was like a in the very original planning documents, which Zena put together, and it's too bad she's not here because she could speak to this more fully than I can. I think there was a part of the project that there was going to be like a lecture series. So that suspiciously sounds like a podcast, or it's maybe in the same domain. But I think that came out of like again, I think this is coming from the St. John's tradition where they have a Friday night lecture. You go to it and you hear like a tutor, you hear someone that you look up to as it's that modeling thing that we spoke about earlier. Brady asked about this. So like you're seeing someone model what it would look like to deeply interrogate a text. So they're sort of demonstrating that in the lecture, like they've read this text and thought about it, and here are their thoughts. But then after every lecture at St. John's, you'd have a question period that would be like this, where it's open, students are present, tutors are present, there's open disagreement, there's a dialogue, and it goes, and there's no end point. Like it just goes until the room empties. So you'll see like people coming out of lecture period at like 2 in the morning or something, if it's been a good lecture, or a question period, sorry. So I think that was the vision for the lectures. I think there was a problem, although I don't remember having conversations about this. I think there was a problem basically with how to incorporate that into an online community. I hope I answered your question at some point in that.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I would imagine it would be difficult to like have like to really get the feel of a Q&A after a talk
Yeah.
in an online group, like especially with folks who maybe are new to that kind of thing. Because so much of that is just something you have to learn. You have to learn the culture of engaging in that kind of activity.
Yeah. Well, guys, should we call it? Any last questions? All right.
We get a recording of this?
Yes. So I have recorded this, and it'll take me a minute, but it will eventually go up on our YouTube channel, and I'll share the link with the community. So thank you all for coming and for participating, sharing your questions and thoughts about the project. It's yeah, it's a real joy to me to be part of this. So,
Thank you so much for hosting.
good night and happy
Good night,
holidays.
everybody.